Welcome back to 1 Hour with Ali Bashar Studio, and tonight we have Mr. Howard Stephen and Sally Stephen. I think we can continue on the next topics, which is on leadership. Perhaps Howard or Sally can share us,
I think the comment we were mentioning during the break about how the process works that Sally just gave you is a good introduction for the audience to hear.
Maybe Sally.
We have spent time building and understanding the skills that people use at work, and our tool, the assessment, helps to identify each individual's set of skills so that the company can then put them in positions that are following their skill pattern and not expecting them to work out of their weaknesses. That is where the big productivity gain comes from, because most people who fail are not bad, they're just in the wrong job and being expected to use their weaknesses.
Where the problem surfaced very strongly for the U.S. government again was with NASA this time, the National Aeronautics Space Administration. And they had a lot of companies, Hughes, Boeing, TRW, so forth, involved. And most of these companies were basically engineering companies. There were more engineers than anything else. But to put up a satellite is a little different than a production company. It's a 1 or 2 year project, very expensive, where you pull a team together and accomplish the goal. Working with the government back then was very risky because there would be penalties for being late. And the reason for the penalties was satellites have very strong weather conditions. So if you get the satellite in the window when they can launch it, that's good. If you don't, then that's very bad and you get significant penalties.
Of course.
Engineering companies are most likely to promote engineers into management.
Of course.
All of these companies were doing that, and what the government, or NASA actually, and the military that was funding it, were concerned about is more than 50% of the engineers who got promoted into management to run these projects failed. They didn't get it done on time. They weren't effective. They were frustrated and bothered. To make it worse, it was often a very good engineer that did really good engineering work, but once you got promoted and failed, they left the company. I mean, there was too much loss of faith to go back, or face rather, to go back and be that.
Has it to do with some sort of leadership skills?
Absolutely. Yes. The skills to be a good engineer, and not the skills to influence, motivate, direct, and manage other people. So we did the first ever, and maybe the only one that's ever been done, 5-year study of what is the difference. And what they did is they identified across all these companies several hundred what they called high potentials. And by the way, in today's U.S. dollars, these were people in their late 40s, early 50s, not just starting, and were paid over $100,000. And now we're talking 20 years ago. So that's pretty significant back then. We broke the group over 5 years into half were not even told they were high potentials. They were just left to their own. The other half were worked with in a variety of different ways, and that's where we did the research on what skills and what kind of training and what kinds of assignments would develop them. Bottom line, by the way, is, as we might suspect, all of the individuals who were high potentials progressed upward. That part was accurate. But the people that were worked with the technology and the applications of this got there twice as fast. So they ended up in senior positions for 10 years versus the others who only made it in 5. Well, if you look at the value of those individuals, the money spent to select, identify, train, and put them into the right job. From that, we learned what the 4 biggest mistakes were in leadership development. And the first one was not recognizing there's a difference between a project person who is good to accomplish something short or long term versus a production person who's more a total quality management person just working the details. They're not interchangeable positions. A turnaround artist who's brought in to fix a company is very good for turning it around, but once he's got it turned around, you need to get him out of there and he'll move on to another one. Great entrepreneurs are like that. They'll start one business, sell it, start a next business because they don't want to run them. The second issue was the difference between line and staff. Engineering is often a staff function. A line manager isn't an expert in any one thing, but they're good at taking risks and making a decision. People that are experts become specialists in one area, and they're not very good generally. By the way, we say this humorously, because talented people get so specialized they're not good at other things. We know that great leaders have to be talentless.
Talentless.
Yeah. They have to be wise enough to recognize all of that.
And then build a team that balances the needs that they have to get the job done.
Right.
So it turns out that the core skill of a leader is being able to identify what the real issues were, identify what skills are going to be necessary to fix those issues, and identify the best people to do it. Every one of the people they bring in are going to be smarter than they are. I'm going to bring in a finance guy who understands finance better than me. I'm going to bring in an operations guy and an IT, all of who are better than me. So it turns out the great leaders were never great doers. They were wise enough to recognize who the great doers were and bring them into the organization. Took us 5 years to learn that. NASA still understands that. The rest of the world doesn't. Many, many leaders are afraid to bring in people that are too good for fear they'll lose face or they'll show them up or something. And if you surround yourself with weaker players, all of that can happen is you deteriorate. The competition does better than you. If you surround yourself with smarter players, you'll do well. If the second thing occurs, and the second thing occurs, you make life so pleasant for those individuals, they want to stay working for you. The key to that, by the way, is to make individuals feel good about who they already are. And what good leaders do is they don't manage their employees for the sake of the company. They manage the company for the sake of the employees.
Fantastic.
They block the barriers and clear away the difficulties that get in their way, and then they're very, very successful.